Good morning, Sasha. It's another Military Wednesday. Last time I talked to you about what to do when you have a toxic leader. Don't have a ton of tips on that one, but hopefully it was a little helpful. Here's a couple of tips on making sure that you don't become a toxic leader because I don't, I don't think most people go down a road of being, when they become a toxic leader, they don't like, I'm just going to be toxic because I like that. I think it has more to do with unawareness and not really understanding your impact. And it could be for lots of reasons. Maybe you're low in empathy. Maybe you're just not a highly relational person, or maybe you grew up in an environment where it was all about performance, 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 and so you just sort of turn that, and maybe you're a little harsher. Maybe people aren't as resilient or whatever it is. So a couple of things to look out for to make sure you're not a toxic leader. Number one, when things happen, right, don't overreact. Now, I know it's hard, and sometimes I know I overreact and you overreact, and we're all sort of prone to overreacting. But, in a professional environment, something goes wrong. Okay, you really like, first of all, number one thing, focus on the problem without blame. Hey, how are we going to fix this? Let's get it fixed. Okay. Then after that, do sort of okay, how did this happen? Right. And some of it may be on you. Hey, you didn't give good guidance, or hey, you were supposed to do something and you procrastinated, and then it turned into kind of a crap show at the end because everyone was scrambling around. When that happens, hey, take ownership. Right. I had an issue a couple weeks in work where I didn't know where this distribution list was and I couldn't find it. And so I was, kind of berated a little bit by the person in charge that said, hey, this was a simple ask and it took like 5 hours. And I said, Roger, I accept full responsibility and I'll make this better. And so what did I do? The next day, I sat down with the people that knew where everything was, and I made sure that if I was ever asked that question again, I knew exactly where all the documents were, all the distribution lists were, and everything that he was asking for. So that hasn't come up again, but if it does come up, I'm not getting cut short. So when I say I accept responsibility, that means I'm not going to point the fingers, even though, like, the guy that was supposed to be doing it, he was off on leave because he had a death in the family or whatever. I didn't sit there and make a bunch of excuses. I just said, listen, I accept responsibility, which means, yeah, there are things I could have done ahead of time. I should have figured out where these things were. I wasn't 100% sure that it was part of my job, but I should have, if I had been maybe a little more proactive and realized that, then maybe I would have taken steps before. The other thing, when I say I take responsibility for it, is that means I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to make sure that I take steps to fix it. So I did that. So, but if you're the leader, right, when things go wrong, don't overreact to them. Number two, right, if it's your responsibility, take responsibility. Don't say, if it's one of your subordinates that did something wrong, and you either, whatever, you should really step up and say, listen, okay, I got this. Especially if they briefed you and you said, hey, this is good, let's go with this. And then your boss comes down and says, this is bad, don't do this. Like, why did you do this? Don't be like, well, I don't know why we did it. They're pointing at the fingers at someone else. So don't do that, right? Take responsibility, take ownership, and then also, like, when it happens, you don't need to freak out. Don't There's a great quote from I think I'm not sure if it's Dawson Trotman or someone, but it was like, or maybe I think it's Winston Churchill. Actually, I think he actually said, I just heard it quoted a bunch of times, and it's something along the lines um, of success is never final, failure is rarely fatal, and it's just the courage to keep going that counts, right? So, freaking out over, hey, someone doesn't get on the right VTC or the right Teams message or whatever, it's not such a big deal. You don't really need to freak out about it. So it's not something that really needs to define you. But like, here's what happens. If you do kind of go off the end, oh, I can't believe this happened, this is all messed up, right? You do that a couple of times, and pretty soon what you'll discover is every single decision, someone comes to you and asks you, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And it's going to be frustrating because you're going to be like, I just want you guys to take some initiative. But they're not going to take initiative because you've set up this sort of idea that failure equals scolding or shame or whatever, right? So you've got to be able to encourage people, but at the same time, like, not be just like, oh, don't worry about it, just keep going. Like, you can correct the mistake, but you don't have to, like, get onto them or like blow up on them, because once you blow up a few times, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to hear about the problems. They're going to hide them. They're going to like, I'm not going to tell him that. Just let him discover. Maybe he'll never find out. Maybe he will when he's going to get mad one way or the other. So I'm just not going to bring it up. Right? That's not what you want. You want people bringing you bringing you problems. You want to encourage them to bring solutions too, but you want to encourage innovation, and you can't do that if you're just hammering people every time they make a mistake. So that's one of the big ways. Micromanaging is another one, where you give someone a task and you're just constantly on them. Now, if you remember from strengths, if you have high responsibility, that may be a challenge, and so you may need to have some discussions about, hey, I have high responsibility. When I'm given a task, it's really hard for me to just kind of let go and just trust. So, let's set up some type of, feedback loop or whatever, where I feel like, I'm getting the updates that I need, but at the same time, you don't feel like you're being micromanaged. So lots of other tips, but, being self-aware, understanding the impact of sort of your emotions and your reactions on your team can be very helpful in making sure that you're not a toxic leader. All right, take care. I love you. Bye.